Warning, the video you are about to watch contains spoilers concerning the plot of this work and possibly others as well. Hey guys, it's me, OptimusPhillip, and with 2 more weeks until the release of The Amazing Spider-Man 2, I will review Spider-Man 3. Now I'm going to start this off with a critical analysis, but that's not going to be all. You'll see what else is there later. Let's start off with the cast and characters. Let's start off with Peter for obvious reasons. I think he really did a good job carrying emotion, and you really do buy how much he loves MJ. Though I do sort of question his tactics against Harry, his best friend, even before he gets the black suit. Despite this, whenever Peter's in control, rather than the costume, he's honest, humble, caring, and forgiving. The same cannot be said for Mary Jane, however. At first, she does a pretty good job, despite my initial complaints that she is a bit miscast. Once the review for her play comes in, though, she starts to get a little shallow. She loses 1 acting job. What's to stop her from taking vocal lessons? And getting better and auditioning for another role? And for that matter, why doesn't she tell Peter that she was fired? She tells her friend, but not her boyfriend? I'm sure Peter would have been a lot more supportive if he knew she needed support. Honestly, if I found out my girlfriend was in a situation like that and didn't tell me, and then got mad at me for not being supportive, I'd dump her right then, but maybe it's just me. Also, I do have to admit that her replacement is a bit of a better singer. Aunt May is... This is going to be pretty short for Aunt May, but she's a great person, continues to provide a voice of reason for Peter, and she really does work as a great mother figure to him. Gwen Stacy, for starters, let's just say that she does not really come across as a very good adaptation of Gwen Stacy. She's portrayed as a complete idiot. She does modeling jobs for some reason, and she actually says that she'd be totally lost without Peter. That's not Gwen Stacy. That's Penny from The Big Bang Theory. Speaking of sitcom stars, Topher Grace's Eddie Brock is next. Not only is the casting way off, a 90s sitcom star, really, but they seem to have rewritten the character to accommodate an actor who clearly cannot do Eddie Brock right. Instead of the honest, born and raised Roman Catholic boy with daddy issues, we get a lying, cheating, sleazy whiner. I haven't seen That 70s Show, but I've seen How I Met Your Mother, and Eddie seems more like Barney Stinson than Eddie Brock. To perform the cheat my way into getting the photo and beat Parker out for the job, you are going to need a digital camera and a photo editor that can desaturate parts of images as well as delete them. First, you might want to take pictures from a bank robbery. This is a very important thing because this will be your background for the photo. Take your time and make sure you got the right one. Got it? Good. Now, remove the background and desaturate Spider-Man to make him look black. Be very careful because you don't want to make any foolish mistakes that could give it away as a fake. So take your time. Okay, good. You finished. There. Now you've superimposed it over the background and you've got the photo. Flint Marko. He's supposed to be a sympathetic bad guy, but I don't think they did it as well as they intended. He steals money to pay for his dying daughter's medical treatment, but in the process he accidentally shoots Uncle Ben after being startled. Okay, I buy that. What I don't buy is that he acts like he regrets Uncle Ben's death, but has no remorse for nearly killing the people in the armored car, and then he goes for revenge against Spider-Man. That's not sounding sympathetic to me. Harry. He has much more of a presence here from the start, which is surprising since he hadn't even taken the serum at that point. When he does and gives that first attack, you can tell from the start that he is not kidding around. He'll cut the line from which his best friend is swinging thousands of feet above the ground to avenge Norman. I wish he'd gotten more to do before he lost his memory. Visual effects. In the past couple videos, I talked about how the mid-air shots are a bit iffy from a CGI perspective, and that is no different here. A lot of the shots of Spider-Man swinging or fighting guys in midair, those are pretty clearly CG. There are some exceptions, but that's the way it mostly works. But the Sandman CGI is phenomenal, and to my knowledge, that technology, like the spider cam for the first film, was developed specifically for this movie. Now, there are some issues with the Sandman CGI. Well, one that I can think of. There's that first shot of him reforming with that close-up of the pebbles. Those don't really look like chunks of gravel. Now, as far as the score goes, again, the main titles theme is pretty cool, and the Venom theme is just awesome. It's almost feels like a twisted form of the main title theme, and that totally works for Venom. The Sandman theme, it's good. It's pretty good. I will admit, it's a pretty good piece. But it just doesn't exactly scream Sandman to me. The new Goblin theme really does work well in the first fight. And, that's really all I have for score in my notes. But, anyway, score is minor. The thematic elements are next to go under the microscope. There are actually a couple themes to this movie. There's the theme of forgiveness and the theme of revenge. Revenge is embodied by Venom, best shown in the scene with Peter and Aunt May after Phil and Marco was seemingly killed. Her description of vengeance is very similar to Venom, and what we're supposed to take from this is that revenge can make you just as bad as you see the person who wronged you as being. And we're supposed to see black-suited Spider-Man as Spider-Man with this power of revenge in his hands, but he abandons it before it's too late, and then it gets on Eddie. The problem with that is that Peter does let vengeance get the better of him, just like Eddie does, and he doesn't turn into the doomed host of Venom. So the movie comes across as saying is, if you don't want to face consequences for doing bad things, be the protagonist of your story. Onto the forgiveness theme. Everyone in this movie needs to forgive and needs to be forgiven, and it seems like their actions define their fate, like in Spider-Man 2. Harry needs to forgive Peter for seemingly killing his father and needs forgiveness for trying to kill his best friend without offering him the chance for forgiveness. Harry is forgiven, he forgives, then he gets killed. If this has anything to do with forgiveness, which it seems like it does, then it's not telling us anything. He dies even though he's forgiven? That's dumb. A slightly better example of the theme is Eddie, who's actually the only good example of this theme. He needs to forgive Peter for humiliating him, and needs to be forgiven for his cheating his way into getting his way. That kind of sounds repetitive now that I think about it. Anyway, he doesn't forgive, and because of that, he dies before he can receive the forgiveness he deserves. Now that works a whole lot better than Harry. On to Sandman, he needs to be forgiven for killing Uncle Ben. Now I understand being forgiven for that, but not only does he get too much forgiveness, not facing the consequences of his actions, but he also can't be forgiven for everything else, so that doesn't work very much. Peter basically needs to forgive everybody. He forgives Sandman, he forgives Harry, and I think he might have actually forgiven Eddie if Eddie's refusal to forgive hadn't sealed his fate. Now he also needs forgiveness for trying to kill Sandman, for nearly killing Harry and seemingly killing Harry's dad, and for humiliating Brock. He is forgiven for all those things, except for the humiliation thing, since he refused to forgive him. But if you ask me, he, like Sandman, got too much forgiveness. He doesn't have consequences for trying to kill Sandman and nearly killing Harry, which I feel he should, despite his forgiveness. There are some other positives, though. The black suit looks great. Yeah, it's not comic accurate, but that doesn't matter. If you want to see how much I think comic accuracy is a minor thing, go watch my video where I talk about the Amazing Spider-Man 2 costume change. Anyway, they did plan on doing a comic book look for the black suit, but it was skin-tight, shinily smooth, and I agree with the producers that it looked like he was in a porno. I honestly prefer the matte gray look with the hexagon pattern, and that wouldn't have looked good without the webs. So I think that this works much better on film. On the topic of the symbiote, there are some scenes where the suit's control over him is portrayed excellently. Like the scene where Mr. Ditkovich asks Peter for rent and he says, "You'll get your rent when you fix this damn door!" Now, of course, all of that is thrown out the window when he goes all comedic and such, but at first, it works wonderfully. Now on to the long, long, list of gripes. The symbiote's arrival is a bit too convenient. Not only does that meteor, out of millions of meteors, happen to be one of the few to actually hit Earth, but it lands right underneath the one person whom the plot demands obtain it. It's not like it could guide its asteroid towards Peter, who has more power and more potential for an adrenaline rush than anyone else, and even if it could, that is not made clear. I have a hard time buying that the terminally ill daughter is still alive, considering that the movie takes place at least 2 years after the events of the first movie. Harry's suit is a big point of contention for a lot of people, and yeah, I do see why so many people hate it. It took me a while to figure out a good comparison for it, and I decided that the best one has to be Jason Voorhees, though I haven't seen that movie. But yeah, that's probably the closest I'm going to get to a real example. With the sword and the very sports-like motif, that's probably the closest I'm ever going to find to a real example, even though it's kind of a remote thing. The scientists at the sand testing facility should have at least checked to make sure it was a bird. Also, why are they demolecularizing sand? What's the point? I know it could possibly have huge medical benefits, like destroying tumors, but why would you try doing it to sand? Why doesn't the symbiote bond to MJ when they're all alone? It must be starving. Why isn't there better maintenance on a crane that could destroy an entire skyscraper if it malfunctions? The slightest fault should cause alarm and immediate disuse of the crane until it's repaired. Why is Gwen a model here? She's supposed to be a book-savvy nerd, like Peter. There's a guy on YouTube, Sam, who might get mentioned a lot in media reviews since we rarely agree, but he does actually make more than a few good points, like the fact that Peter has a perfect opportunity to explain to Harry what happened the night Norman died, but no, he just lets things go by and tries to keep his mind off Norman for fear of his memories returning. Speaking of, Harry's amnesia is another issue. It's really kind of superfluous here, and you have to admit, it's only there so that Sandman can be the bad guy. Though it is a nice nod to how Norman lost his memory in the comics, it isn't really worth it. Why does Spider-Man actually encourage Gwen to kiss him when he knows MJ is right there? The Peter and MJ drama is a big one for basically everyone who ever criticizes this movie. I complain about MJ being kind of selfish here, but that's not to say that this is all on her. He may not know she's been fired, but he does know about the bad review. Why is he trying to comfort her with talk about Spidey's success in the restaurant? Maybe it'd sound better if he prefaced it with some talk about how he'd been flamed all the time before. Oh, wait! That didn't work in the apartment. Just a totally contrived complication. Also, the love triangle. It's just not necessary here. Not only is there already a contrived complication that threatens to end their relationship, but I just hate love triangles in general. Well, forced ones at least. I'm sorry, Twilight fans, but if there's a forced love triangle that eclipses everything else, no pun intended, then I don't like it. Don't get me wrong, they do make some good points there, and at least they reconcile at the end, putting this whole thing behind them. But I still think this all could have been avoided if MJ had told Peter these things and actually let him help her, and if Peter was more understanding. One more thing, Bruce Campbell's Hatred D is just hilarious when he brings the champagne and stuff to the table after an obvious argument, as though they were just there having a good time. Also, the Sandman being Uncle Ben's killer thing, again, just feels unnecessary. Now, I enjoyed Tim Burton's Batman despite the Joker being Thomas and Martha Wayne's killer, but this, for some reason, just doesn't sit right. Maybe it was just that this was obviously not intended to start, and they don't even try to offer a full explanation for how this is possible. Maybe it's just that it didn't need to be here, but either way, it doesn't sit right with me. Kind of think of it, did Sandman even need to be in this movie at all? I mean, if it weren't here, we wouldn't have had to bother with this retcon, and Harry and Venom would have gotten a lot more to do, both of them. The Venom symbiote was heavily advertised, but between the fact that for the first hour it was all Harry, Sandman, and MJ, I forgot it was even there until it showed up to possess Peter at the 1 hour mark. Same goes for Sandman. Between the black suit, Harry, and more MJ, you forget he's even there. How does Dr. Connors know about symbiotes? Have they arrived on Earth before and been captured and studied by scientists? Why did Mary Jane turn to Harry instead of Peter? Because Peter is not supportive? How can he be if she doesn't know she needs support? Also, why does Mary Jane break up with Peter when she knows that he can take Harry? Are we supposed to agree with MJ and Harry that Peter wasn't there for her? Because he can't be there for her if he doesn't know he needs to. Peter looks remorseful when he sees what he's been doing to his friend without the venom filter, but a split second later he throws a bomb in Harry's face. Is he only able to resist the suit for so long? What is with the comedic montage of emo Peter? They were setting it up to be dark with how mean he is to Brock, Harry, and Marco. Why did they do a complete 180 in tone? You go from throwing a bomb into his best friend's face to humping the air. No, really. Legitimately humping the air. Also, the jazz club bit, just why? I agree it's weird that after an attempted murder, brutally beating his best friend, humiliating a guy, and using Gwen to make MJ jealous, it's starting a bar fight and barely bruising MJ that gets him to come to his senses. Why didn't Bernard tell Harry about the glider thing years ago? No, they planned on this being the final film in case it was, but did they have to kill Venom? I mean, really? The next gripes are going to seem a bit nitpicky, but I feel the need to include them. I wish they'd tried to make the Venom in the mirror bit work. They cut it because the actor's teeth showed through and kind of ruined the illusion, but I wish they'd refilmed it with a better suit and left it in. Without it, Peter just sees the suit chest and is scared. I don't know why he'd be scared of that. What's with the Harry and the waitress bit? Harry is asked how the pie tastes, and he responds with, "So good." That's why. No one notices that it doesn't look like the Spidey and Eddie's picture is holding the money bag. Also, why does Peter say, "You want forgiveness? Get religion"? It's not like Eddie said anything about forgiveness. Why a bell tower? Was there a deleted scene where Connor's experiments with sound and the symbiote? What a coincidence! Eddie just happened to be praying for Peter's death at the same church where Peter was getting rid of the thing that could make that possible. Is that God doing it? That's what the angelic choir is making it sound like. But that's not the God I know and love. Why do they feel the need to show Peter in the shower? Peter says that he's not ready to put his wife before himself. Why? The only reason he wasn't there for MJ was because she didn't let him be there for her. How did Venom know about Sandman's daughter? Venom's voice just does not go with his face. I mean the Venom face, not the Eddie Brock face. When Sandman's arm gets wet in the subway scene, it behaves like wet sand. It gets all clumpy and darkens in color, but it's still solid. When Spidey wets him a few seconds later, however, he behaves like wet earth, turning to mud. I buy this misconception at first, but then you notice that they actually got it right before. Did they have to do the American flag thing again? I get that they're trying to bookend anything, but is that even really necessary? Critical conclusion. When looking at this movie critically, it is kind of disappointing. I take that back, it's very disappointing. There's only one good example of the theme. Some of the casting is way off. Characters can't make up their mind about what kind of person they are, and there are way too many faults in the plot to give it a good score. Normally I'd give this movie a 2.5 out of 10. However, this is not a movie to overanalyze. This is a movie that can actually be enjoyed. The only reason I can think of that critics don't enjoy it is because they're overthinking it. For once, a critic is going to say, do not be critical with this. Anyone who's given this movie a bad review, just sit down in an armchair with a bowl of popcorn and a bottle of Coke, put this movie in the player, take off your thinking cap, and just watch. You'll sit on the edge of your seat when Harry attacks Peter. You'll cry during the flashbacks. You'll shiver when the symbiote bonds to Peter. You'll fear the black-suited Spider-Man. You'll beg for Peter and MJ to sort things out. You'll laugh when Peter makes a fool of himself at the jazz club. You'll be afraid of Venom. You'll cry for Harry. It may get bad reviews, but to the casual viewer, it can still be thoroughly enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and see you next week when I review The Amazing Spider-Man, another controversial movie.